How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Luna Global Citizen. Oh wait, sorry. Let me just fix that. There we go. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Luna Office Hour. This is, I know, that was too soon. I'm sorry, guys, but you gotta have fun when you can have fun these days.
And cut her some slack, right? Cut her some slack.
I have a theory that it was actually a modded mic, that it was like permanently in Omni, or I've seen a C12 where the capsule was installed backwards on it. But it honestly, it sounded super duper roomy, so I think she probably did mess it up.
It's the rare double badged 47.
Exactly.
Got a badge on both sides.
Can't find those everywhere. But yeah, welcome everybody. We are actually live. We're not just pre-taping and then rolling back our videos here. We do it all on the fly for your fun and enjoyment. Oh, I'm so glad you guys got the joke. And so this afternoon, we don't have anything specific to show you guys. So this is your chance, if you're watching right now. If you've got any questions that need answering, that is the gig this afternoon, is making sure you guys are getting all the help and support that you need and getting up and running inside of Luna, and or we'll just make jokes the whole time. Your choice, guys. But I think a good place to start is kind of teeing up with some of the things that we have heard loud and clear and are working feverishly to get fixed and push out in the upcoming update. Connor, could you drop some knowledge for people about what's coming up?
Yeah, sure thing. Happily. So as you all know, we've already done a 1.0.1 release, and we will soon be following on with another update, all targeted at bug fixing and addressing the most critical and high volume feedback items that we can make quick and safe action on. Some things are hard to fix quickly and be sure that they're all fixed and stuff, but we've got a couple things that are cropping up in high frequency that we're going to have rolled out fixes for in the very near future, as soon as possible. Can't say exactly when because we're just finishing things up, but wanted to let you guys know that stuff is coming soon. So users of French and German keyboards, a lot of keyboard shortcut issues with the placement of keys. That's going to be squared away for the vast majority of the key commands on there. There's further work to do on some of those things because they require custom mapping, but we've got all the basics sorted out.
Nice.
Another one that's been coming in high volume is that the Remember Me checkbox for login is in many cases not being honored. You have to log in multiple times. We have improved the performance of that in cases where the logout would have occurred due to loss of connection or other things. We're doing better at keeping that around. Things like some consolidate bugs where clip gains being forgotten, and a good handful of other stuff. We're up at around 100 things that are around 80 to 100 things that are going to be in this. So and we'll let you know exactly what the most important fixes are, and that should be coming, like I said, as soon as possible. And if the thing that you're having trouble with is not addressed in this release, keep the feedback coming. I want to, for anyone that has submitted feedback and hasn't gotten a response, I will tell you that I have read almost 6,000 feedback items.
Wow.
Personally.
6,000.
Yeah, since we launched, and that's not all. So there's just too much for us to take individual response time on, but we're cataloging all of them and counting things up and making sure that stuff is, had my own mic issue here, that stuff is informing what we're doing next. So if you are experiencing some trouble that's not fixed in the next update, keep the feedback coming. Our goal is to be really quick on our feet here in this initial period after launch to make sure that we're, there's so much complexity in a recording system.
Surprise.
Yeah. So we want to, and of course, we put this out early in this time. Hope you all saw Bill's letter on that. It was a beautiful letter. So like I said, just keep the feedback coming, and we're going to keep on responding as quickly as we can to that stuff so that we can keep you guys rolling.
Yeah, and so people are clear, like the feedback is a one-way street. That's for us users to get you guys. It's not a place where you want to submit something where you expect a response, right?
Yeah. We're trying to figure out how we process all that because, frankly, we just weren't prepared for the volume. It's a wonderful problem to have. It's a victims of our own success kind of thing. So it's a wonderful problem. It's just that like, oh yeah, we're going to have to figure out, a lot of folks are, asking in these replies, like, please, I haven't heard back. And if you're one of those folks, I'm sorry, we just don't have the time right now to individually respond to all of those issues. If you do need immediate help, please contact customer service to get help with that, and we'll sort things out that way. But yes, this stuff is going to be coming into us and informing how we respond through action, not always necessarily through direct responses to the feedback through words.
Right. Yeah. And you also can come to, our forums, uadforum.com, and many of the Facebook groups. There's lots of experienced helpers, lots experienced users out there who are happy to offer their help. And so there's definitely help out there from multiple channels.
Yep. And docs.uaudio.com. You can also hit the help button inside of Luna, the help menu, I should say. And there's a link to the documentation, which is online. You can also download a PDF there too and search through all of that really easily. So yeah, feedback is voluminous and incredibly helpful. It's exactly what we want to be taking action on. And it's not the only place we're getting input. We're, sort of keeping track of things that are coming in on all the live streams, on the forums, and checking it out with all of the other data that we have through the feedback mechanism. So keep it coming. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. And Connor, so you've had a bunch of people kind of questioning. Do you mind kind of letting people know the render IO and memory, those meters in the bottom corner of Luna? What are those telling people? And what, if people are seeing a lot of red on those, what does it mean and what should they do about it?
Sure. So the meter on the left, the render meter, is a measurement of the CPU usage of the mixing buffer in Luna. So that is the high latency, sort of just everything's playing back, all of your tape emulation, all of your native plugins, all of your Neve summing, all of that stuff is going to show up in the render meter. Now, there are other things that can impact what appears in the render meter, but the actual graph is going to be displaying what that CPU usage measurement is. Mm-hmm. The next one over, the render IO meter, is the meter that's tracking performance and CPU utilization of the low latency buffer for instruments. Yeah. And then the memory is the memory usage of Luna. So the situation with a high render meter can be all over the map. There's many possible causes for that, some of which just boil down to you have reached the capacity of your computer to process audio at the buffer size. Others could be could in some cases just be a single plugin in your entire session that's acting crazy. Yeah. So there are examples of that where we've had sessions come in and we're like, oh, we just had to dig through everything and find that there's one particular effect that's doing that. Oftentimes those are effects that combine other modules inside them. Mm-hmm. So not to name and shame, but if you've got a plugin out there that's like putting like 30 modules in it, some other plugin, like a plugin host or something that has its own like sort of rack kind of thing, keep your eye out for those, because those can sort of be a hidden danger of high CPU utilization. There are instances where going in and out of accelerated real-time monitoring mode can spike the render meter, and we're investigating stuff like that. Shouldn't be an issue. Mm-hmm. And then just, what system are you running on? Make sure you're meeting our recommended minimum specifications, the Intel Core i7 and solid state drives for the instruments, in particular, the Luna instruments. So keep in mind all of those various factors. And if you're in a situation where you've just opened a session and there's what you would consider like virtually nothing in that session and the render meter is high, you're most likely looking at a troubleshooting scenario and not sort of an expected result of the performance of your system, unless you've managed to get Luna open on like a, G5 or something.
Which in theory should be impossible, right?
Yeah. Good luck to you. We'd hire you if you could figure that out, probably. Yeah.
So, hey, Connor, that reminds me of something I remember seeing over the weekend was the importance of SSDs overall, whether it be for your OS and Luna and or sessions. Anything that you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, SSDs are, I think I was saying this on a previous live stream, that, that I still can remember the first time I booted a solid state system with the, the OS installed on a solid state drive and realizing, oh, this has been the bottleneck this whole time. Mm-hmm. So if you are still out there not having had that experience, switch to SSD and you won't go back. And the value of disk space is increasingly optimized for consumer drives. You can get a SSD out, that's used just for your working drive, basically for around $100 most of the time. That certainly has the capacity to run many Luna sessions. So it's just an overall optimization to your user experience of your computer, of having more than one tab open in Chrome, of like whatever it is you do, everything will work better for you.
And for
on SSD.
sessions, same advice would apply.
Yeah, I mean, we don't require an SSD for the minimum spec for a Luna session, but given the Luna instrument minimum requirement of the SSD, it makes sense to run them there. You're going to have increased performance. We actually, the technology we use for the session package format is optimized for SSDs and has work done to actually even work correctly for spinning disks. So we don't want to exclude that as a possibility, but it's specifically optimized to be able to read and write huge amounts of data instantly, basically, because it doesn't have to seek.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's great info. Thank you.
It was so right before we jumped onto this office hours, I was on a call with our good friend Corey Congilio, who's going to be coming on Friday afternoon. We're going to be kind of walking through, using Luna as a session guitar player, as a guitar teacher, and kind of basically, the things that he's doing all the time. And then also I'll be there to answer his questions. But he brought it up, and then also a couple of the guys on our copywriting team brought this up today. Over the weekend, they were experimenting with just pulling tracks out of Pro Tools or Logic and then throwing them into Luna. And they all have said the same thing. They're all like, why does it sound better in Luna without Neve summing, without tape, without adding any bells and whistles to it? Is there, Connor, you're the man to answer this. You know that engine the best. Is there something about the Luna audio engine that's treating things differently, that it would actually sound different and better to their ears?
From the technology standpoint, this is it's not something that I fully understand. Mm-hmm. So we have the same core technology, and in theory, the way that all 32-bit floating point engines that have anything to do with core audio on a Mac should all, in theory,
sound, right? Yeah.
But I'm not going to argue with anyone's ears out there. If you're ultra curious and ultra nerdy, do some null tests. You'll probably find that we've found some things that don't just cancel when in theory they ought to. But that is the magic of what we've got going on here. Certainly, any Neve summing, any analog tape, you're immediately in a whole new paradigm with your mix engine and with the sound that you've got coming out of it. But I don't know what to ascribe it to. It's beautiful, wonderful feedback, but I think it's just the Apollo integration. There's nothing. There shouldn't be anything in theory magical or special about our mix engine. But I'm not going to argue with anybody that says it sounds better, because that's my personal experience, but I have to scratch my head.
But it's really funny as we started talking about this. Everybody in the chat's like, "Me too." It's a common occurrence from everybody that's jumping in and bringing their tracks over from a different workstation into Luna. It instantly does. It's got something to it. As to what it is, we don't know. But then, especially like you mentioned, as soon as you start adding tape and adding summing to it, it just kind of takes it to a whole nother level. And that's somewhere that literally no other workstation can reach without a ton of extra work and a lot of plugin windows.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, I saw a good question come in too. Somebody was asking about ARP and shape and how to connect those two. I've got a session open. I can share my screen and give you guys. It's very, very easy, very simple. So let me just throw shape onto this instrument track. So to get ARP going, you're gonna be surprised with how completely easy and simple this is. So on the focus channel here, so this is my brand new instrument track. Shape is loaded up. Let's take it off of a piano and put it onto. Let's go. You know what? Feeling like a nylon guitar kind of day. MIDI in. I'm gonna, for my setup, it helps if I specify just the one, and then you come down here to MIDI effects. MIDI effects allows you to insert ARP, and now I have ARP is going to affect any keys that I press. Will now be arpeggiated through that guitar. Let's take it up an octave. just like that. So then you can use this to power any instrument. So it doesn't have to be shape. You can come in here, you can load the Minimoog and do the same thing. And just anything that's I'm really glad that we put in MIDI effects, because this allows you to transform your performances. And then there's some really cool stuff that ARP does, some shapes to arpeggiating that I haven't really seen before. These like in, out, and out, in. Those ones are really cool. And then of course the random is one of my all-time favorite ones to go to. You can control the number of octaves. You can tell it to latch. You can have it ignore key range. The amount of power that you actually get inside of ARP is pretty fascinating. And then of course you can quickly switch presets, change the gate time. It's just a lot of cool stuff that you can do with ARP. And again, you can combine that with literally any instrument, whether it's a Luna instrument or AU instrument. They all work equally with the ARP as your MIDI effect.
To go, we can elaborate on that a little bit and just say that if you're working like with a multi-timbral instrument, of course, we don't have support for multi-output yet to route the output of those to different audio channels or instrument tracks in Luna, but you can put ARP on an instrument track and send that to other destinations as well using the MIDI output routing. So if you want multiple things to be triggered by it, you can set it up that way just by choosing the track and the MIDI output selector to get super into the far out sound design thing. Is you can trigger multiple instruments at the same time with the same arpeggiator.
Interesting. So what Connor's saying here is, so with MIDI out, when it's on none, that means that it's just controlling what's up in the instrument, right? But then,
yeah, it's actually passing through the entire channel too. So if there's any MIDI capable inserts on that entire channel, not just in the instrument slot, but in the inserts as well, those will be triggered by MIDI coming into that channel.
A good example of that, right, would be something like Soft 2 vocoder,
right?
Which is MIDI capable but shows up as an instrument or as a regular insert. But then what you can do is you can come up here. So just how I assign my MIDI input, you can come into MIDI output. So I can say, all right, I want this ARP. By default, it's going to be controlling that Minimoog. But I can also have it control my Juno 106. And if I hit the Shift key, I can assign it to literally all of those. Command key would be the one here. You can see now I'm selecting multiple destinations. Let's go to my Tetra, go to my Minotaur. So I now have one instrument track, this one keyboard is now arpeggiating and controlling the Minimoog in the box as well as 4 out-of-the-box synths. And of course, this isn't limited just to out-of-the-box workflow. I've got another instrument track in this session, my sublab. So I can, again, command-click to add that to the stack of the routing. And now... sounds beautiful. Now it's triggering my sublab as well as Minimoog. It's a really powerful thing. And yeah, I don't think we've touched on that yet, Connor, of being able to route from one MIDI track out to multiple destinations. It's super powerful. My bad. A lot of keyboard. Whoever's typing on the keyboard super loudly.
Matt was going to town on that chat room.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm muted now.
Also, someone asked, I think I saw it get answered in text, but I just want to answer it on video as well. The key commands for changing track sizes. This is another fun, easy one. So it's on any track that you have selected, and if you have multiple tracks selected, Control up arrow and down arrow. That's going to be how you can shrink or grow those selected tracks. If you want to do all of your tracks and scale them all up and down, just add Option to that. And again, just kind of keep in mind, whenever you add Option to a command, that means do it to everything, do to all tracks, or do it to all, I think it's just mainly all tracks. So now Control, Option, down arrow scales all my tracks down, up arrow scales them all up. And then finally, the one that I think is most critical to know is Control, Option, Command, down arrow automatically scales all the tracks, both horizontally and vertically, so that they fit onto one screen. So those are super important shortcuts. But if you're not the shortcut type, or as this came up on our session this morning with Sam and Tom, Sam had a guitar in his hand, so he was here trying to record guitar, and they were like, "Oh yeah, so hey, just press Option in this," and holding a guitar and trying to do keyboard shortcuts could be dangerous to your guitar. We do not recommend it. That is why everything that has a key command does also have something that you can click to be able to do that. So for track heights, right here next to the tracks, there's this little box, and here you can select your track heights and adjust it to all tracks, which is also very helpful. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm such a keyboard shortcut junkie that like you always kind of forget that every once in a while you've actually got something in your hands that you don't want to let go or possibly drop in the ground, which was definitely the case with his very beautiful Martin and Gibson guitars. Oh, and I see someone's asking about mastering setups. As long as I'm sharing my screen, I did do a mastering session inside of Luna over the weekend. So I'll just show you guys. This is nothing too fancy, but I'll show you the keys the key way that I like to work with this inside of Luna when I'm mastering something is I have two things, and let me color code these so it's a little easier to see. So these red tracks, these are my unmastered mixes. This green bus, this is kind of my mastering chain. This is the processing that I want both of these songs to share. And then on my main output, I'm putting just nothing's happening on the main. All the processing is either happening on the channels, which typically is just EQ to help kind of bring both songs to live nicely together. And then they share some compression, some EQ, and then finally, of course, limiting. But mastering isn't just about, making things louder or pumping things up in that sense. It's what's really important is that you're referencing with the real world or with other artist projects. So for this artist, this is Johnny Burgos, who I've been mixing in those after hour sessions. These are a couple of songs that we haven't done on those sessions yet, but or don't need to because we're done mixing them. So to master them, I bring them into the session, but then I also brought in a bunch of the records from the last EP that we did, or last album, so that way I can get in the same ballpark. There's one super, super important option that you guys are going to want to know about, and that's up here in the workflow menu. Hit the mixing workflow and solo. So this is basically what I rely on, is being able to go to XOR. So this way, anytime I solo up a track, it cancels the other solo. So now I can easily just jump between the two songs that I'm working on, but then also quickly jump back and reference the songs that we've already released. So I make sure, again, our levels, our tones, the overall vibe, the width, everything about it, and they need to sit well together, on Spotify, iTunes, everywhere. So being able to quickly switch from latching to XOR means I can now demo these. If I was working with a new artist, I would pull their references in. And again, I typically master out of one session for one whole record this way. That way, again, I can have consistency. Using this kind of shared processing, it's very similar, Tom, I think, to what you have, where you've got a desk built out, and these are kind of your tools. These are the palette that you're typically working within. And then you do a little bit of song-to-song shaping. You can even see I did a little bit of automation on the EQ to pull out the bass for the intro and then let it come in by the first verse. Top and tail, just adding a little bit of fades.
Yeah, it's an interesting point bringing up automation for mastering, right? Because a lot of people traditionally would have had a mastering workstation, like I won't name too many of them, but there are quite a few, like Sadie or something. And you can do it, but it's not that common for people to be able to automate. But I think if you approach mastering a bit like a mixer,
yeah,
ability, like I often do it with EQ, just to sort of, there's a resonance on one particular note, instead of having a dynamic thing that's maybe going to catch a really great kick drum that's 2 bars later that I don't want to have that range removed from. I'll just automate that little bit, and I start doing all sorts of weird things, like I'll bump a chorus half a dB, because often a lot of people will have that really glued in. And then when it comes to mastering, you're like, actually you can have it explode, because your bus compression is doing quite a bit, so you can kind of undo some of the like macro, or I suppose the like bigger picture dynamics over the track, whilst letting the mix still have its energy of squash that it had when it was mixed into. So yeah, I love actually being able to master in a workstation that has a timeline with automation, and you can go between tracks and do all of that stuff on all the songs on top of each other, whereas traditionally you'd do it sequentially. In an old mastering workflow, you'd have it one after the other in sequence. But I really like having completely different chains and different automation for each song. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And exactly, I've seen a lot of mastering engineers to do a move like this. They would basically do 2 passes. They'd have to do, all right, for the intro, I need to do a pass where I pull the bass out. They print that, and then they have to go and pull it back up, and then print the rest of it. So yeah, being able to automate this on the timeline and have a very super smooth transition on EQ moves, or very fast, like Tom mentioned, that's the real power here. And I guess I should probably go ahead and take this all the way through to completion, because you guys are going to be wondering, like, great, so you brought it in here, you made it, so I've even out the tone, even out the balance, made it loud, made it, in line with where we were mastering his last record. So now it comes to exporting. So the great thing about exporting is that it respects the solos. So basically what I was doing is selecting the clip, so that way the timeline is automatically selected for the length of that song. Solo it up, Option Command B, come over here, I set a WAV file, 44.1, 16-bit, save it to this folder, and then I would hit mix down, and it would just bounce this offline. I know one thing I've seen some people chatting about over the last couple of weeks is, how do I rename my bounces? You do it after. You do it after the fact. You don't right now in V1 you can't rename your bounces, or they're automatically named based on the track name or based on the session name. So what I would do is I'd hit mix down, it pops into the folder, and then I immediately go into that folder and rename those files from there. So you can see that I did that here. It's trying to open it up right now, but you can see in here. So they were just labeled this, come in here, rename it, give it the versioning system that I like to use, that I stole from Fab, and then zip it up, send it off to the client, and wait for notes.
And luckily, Luna gives you that folder automatically. As soon as the bounce is done, it puts it, it switches to the Finder for you, so it's super convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
The other thing I use a lot, Ben, I don't know about you, but because I have hardware as well, so I'll do some processing with plugins, and I'll actually come out and record back into a print track. I use versions basically, so I can do my instrumental, my acapella, my TV print, my main vocal up, vocal down passes all into versions, and then it's just really quick for me to just keep hitting record and print back all my masters that way, and then they'll all hit the same limiter chain after that on that track, so it's kind of like splitting the processing halfway. I found that became really good over time, because if someone wants a recall, the chances are it's quite small, and so I can do that on that version that got captured back before it's being made mega loud.
Yep.
So I kind of have like a 50-60% halfway point I can roll back to make a revision without having to recall the analog chain. So it's
and then
way quicker.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, you're using we're using the analog chain for what analog does best, right? Like the tone, the compression, EQ, adding a little analog spice to it, right? Capture that, but without it being peak limited. So you haven't done any clipping, you haven't done anything to like really aggressively bring the level up, and then you can do that after the fact and then bounce those offline.
It gives me just a little point of undo.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll come back to you 2 years from now, Tom, and say, we don't want it crushed anymore. Let's go back to that version.
Well, it's funny you say that, but it's actually it actually started doing that already, because I've got an analog limiter which is quite good at getting the level up without having to like clip the A to D converters pretty hard, which is something that happens in mastering, for a good cheat for extra loudness sometimes. And I can generally get up there without having to do that now. And then the cool thing is, if I want to print a version that's lower in level, lower in crush for streaming, I basically don't limit digitally. Most of the time, I'm not even using a digital peak limiter for any level at all. It's just doing half a dB max on like a couple of transients. That's what goes to streaming at a lower level. And then if they really want to go super loud for CD or something, then I just drag the limiter in, and it, boom, comes up 3 or 4 dB, and you're there pretty much.
Yep.
I found that a really useful thing when I started doing different versions if we needed to. Different platforms.
That's smart.
That's
super smart.
Checking into mastering things.
No, but that's cool, because it's a big question a lot of people have, and especially right now because we're in this weird in between phase, right? Of like a lot of artists, when I send them a WAV file, they still want that to be loud. They want loud crushed, and they want somewhere 9 or 6 or 5 LUF. They want some insane numbers, right? Because they think that's still the vibe. But we're all hip to what Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes are doing, where they're saying, well, if you go that far, you're wasting all your headroom, because we're gonna bring you down here so your RMS is equal with everybody else. Or I guess it's LUFS is kind of equal across the board. You're kind of just losing out on potentially 5, 6 upwards of almost 10 dB of peak headroom that you could be using. So that's a smart system you got going there, Tom, of like being able to kind of come in exactly, what feels good and what sounds good. And then if you really need to do a peak limited one, just, throw a clipper or throw a peak limiter on there to handle that part of it.
Yeah, I generally, like, if it's a trickier track that's got way too many dynamics, I will use a clipper into a limiter. But if it's like super well controlled, stable mix, then generally I'll find just one limiter will get there. But what's interesting as well is that, that some of the systems use thing called replay gain, some of them use something called LUFS, and there's no real standard. And although people try aiming at it, I've still found that the major label releases are still coming out hotter on streaming. So I've ended up edging back up again a bit, but not to the point where it's ruined, but just enough to like match up to,
Do you know what your LUFS target is that you're going for those?
I normally sit around like 11 or 10 or 9 if I'm on a really dense big track. So it's not as crushed as, say, some of the really, really crushed records that we got.
I've been referencing.
Became famous for being crushed. Let's say.
Well, man, you brought up a good point. Like in Spotify, you can turn off the normalization, so you can go back to, you can listen to exactly what they submitted in Spotify. I think if you have Spotify Premium, it lets you kind of adjust some of those quality settings. So yeah, I've been referencing some of those, and I've got the TC meter running on behind my desk here. There's still people hitting 6s. There's people hitting 5s, and like. It's just it's absurd the level that they're going for, and then you realize you put on the sound check mode where it brings those down. You're like, damn, it takes so much energy and impact out of the mixes.
Yeah, what's crazy is I've seen those values being delivered for mastering. So like mixes are coming in that hot, like 6s, and I started aiming for 13, 14, like a lot of the guidelines. And then I found that you just come up a couple of dB shy. So I think edging to like 11 to 10 is like that's a pretty good spot right now. But it's I think every mastering guy is different, to be honest. And every record sounds different going there. So I almost like take it to the level that the song can sustain. Like some songs will fall apart at 10 and some songs can hold up at 10 or go to 8 even. Yep. So it's like, it's kind of a tricky game, to be honest. I wouldn't say there's a loudness wars. It's more like a loudness Wild Wild West, really.
Exactly.
No, it's not. There's no like war. There's no battle. There's just a bunch of people like running in different directions right now.
Well, so many people think that it's about the mastering, whereas it's any given mix can only go so loud. It's not. It's way more about the mixing than it is about the mastering.
Well, it's
when mixers get that.
Yeah, well, even more about the mixing. It's about the production. Like I remember the first couple times I handed mixes into. I was working with Dave Kutch as our mastering engineer in New York City, and the first couple ones I submitted to him. I'm like, cool, like, dude, can you drive it? Like, my clients want this to sound huge and what it is. He's like mastering, I can try, but I don't think you guys are going to really like how it sounds, because like loudness starts all the way back at the production. It starts like with the tones and the arrangement and so many more elements affect the loudness and the energy and the impact of that final master. Then the mastering matters a little bit, the mixing matters a lot, but the thing that matters the most is that production and arrangement aspects.
Yeah. And stability in that as well. So like if a musical element has a certain amount of energy to it and then it disappears, you can end up with holes. And so it's like making sure you transition all that stuff, which is more like gestural energy balance in a mix. But mixing does that to a degree, but that really does come from production. Like the sort of sloppier the production, the more holes there are in it. Like you've seen it. I started the same way. Kicks and snares that are like 15, 20 dB louder than the whole song. And that's the only way you could get punch. And then eventually you learn actually by using different compression and maybe different kicks and snare sounds, you can get them closer to the RMS level of the rest of the track, like the average level, but the kicks and snares still hit. Yeah. Whereas early on, I remember mixing with these massive transients, and then you go into a limiter to try and make it commercially loud, and the first thing that goes is your kick and snare. Like, where did they go? Goodbye. Bring them back. Hey, Ben, I don't know whether we've got more questions, but I've just been figuring something out in the background, which is completely unrelated to mastering, but I've seen this question crop up a couple of times, and it does involve another workstation, but I think it's worthwhile showing it because people have been complaining about, or sort of getting confused over how to import MIDI regions and having things separate out into different tracks.
Yep, I've seen that one pop up a bunch. Yeah, let's bring that up.
Is that cool with everyone? I'll just hop in and share my screen on this.
Please do. And I just want to shout out the realest puppet in the game has joined the chat, and he just released Reed Stefan. If you guys don't know, the realest puppet in the game, one of my favorite audio YouTubers. He just uploaded a making a beat in Luna tutorial. So
no way!
I know what I'm watching this afternoon after we're not on stream.
Oh, cool. Let's share this up here. So you should be able to see my screen, and whoop, we're into Logic right now.
What?
But this is
This looks
useful.
so different.
I know what. Yeah, this is strange, but this is because a lot of people are trying to move from some workstation into Luna, and I think they're getting kind of like stuck with MIDI. So this is a little MIDI file that I made, which just has a bunch of chords you can see there going across into different regions. I'm actually going to do something really quickly here. Let me remember different tools. We're going to chop it because I saw one of the questions earlier, which was you've got regions on the track like this.
Yeah.
If you select them all as separate regions like this, and then you do your usual export selection as MIDI, you'll do that. And then when you drag and drop this into Luna, if I go with my pre-made test that I just did earlier, it should be this one. I'm not going to take the tempo map. People are getting this. They're seeing those regions come out as split little sections, and they obviously want them to be, you know, all in one section like this.
Yep.
And that's to do with the MIDI type that you're using. So there are two different MIDI types based off like old school MIDI and how they would split out channels and segments, things like that. So in Logic, I just wanted to show everyone this. If you go to Preferences General, there's this checkbox, Export MIDI file saves single MIDI regions as format 0. If that's checked, that's what you get. Those 4 little segments come out as 4 individual bits, okay? And they get dragged in to different tracks into Luna.
Yeah.
If you uncheck this and select all of those again, and then export that in a different type, what you will get is this file, which I marked up as type 1 because it's no longer type 0 MIDI. When I drag this one in, you'll notice that it is now
There we go. That's what you
nice.
wanted.
That's what you were looking for. So just if anyone's getting stuck on that, and that applies to, say, for example, you're doing lots and lots of MIDI on different channels and you've got them in different MIDI channels or different instruments, that you'll either get them split or you'll get them amalgamated depending on that checkbox. So if you're having issues, check that in whatever workstation you're coming from to see whether you're type 0 or type 1. And that should hopefully give you ability to import MIDI the way you're expecting to import it. So that's my little check there. I don't know whether Connor's got any sort of info on that, but that seems to be
that's a really good point. And the type 0 and type 1 is a really important differentiation because we want to handle type 0 correctly and type 1 correctly. So it's not something that we would change. It's definitely an export setting because that file would be imported similarly anywhere else. So that's a good call.
Yeah, I think some people they're just sort of expecting Luna to bring it in like they saw it, and it's actually an export issue. So I thought I'd bring that up.
That's so funny. There's a good comment in the chat right now. Seeing Logic now is like finding your ex in a Starbucks.
I actually felt a bit like that when I was, it's like, hey, Logic, let me just, just nestle past here. How's things? You okay? I haven't seen you in a while.
I haven't seen you in a bit. Exactly.
Take care. I'm kidding.
Oh, that's so funny. I saw a good one in here that's dear to Marcel. Had a great question. So he's using, for live stream concerts, he likes to use the Oxford limiter on the master output in Pro Tools. He tried to do it in Luna, but it seems impossible because ARM disables inserts on the main. Yes, it does. That is how. So ARM, we talked about this in one of the office hours last week, but essentially ARM's big goal is to give you audio with as low latency as possible. So that means kind of taking straight off of a track and routing it to the monitor outputs or to the Q outputs, and it bypasses any group buses or any main output fader inserts in its effort to give you the audio as fast as possible. So you may just have to rethink your kind of some of that workflow. If you're trying to use a limiter on a full mix and have it happen all in real time. We got a lot of creative, smart people here in the room. Any other tips that you would give someone that's trying to live stream and wants to send out a whole mix and still be in ARM mode at the same time?
Ooh. Say again. Sorry. I was still messing with my MIDI.
So we want to
type 0.
Well,
yeah.
Well, and
Let's just do some more checks.
The way that I would think to do it is the way that we've implemented for our live streams, which I'll be. We're going to pull back the full curtain on how we make these live streams and how they sound decent almost all the time, except for when it's dropping in and out like this morning. We use a couple of tools in the background that kind of make production a little bit easier and allow us to do processing on the monitor outputs of Luna, but it does add latency and it does add a little something in between what you're hearing and what's going out. But it sounds like that, Marcel, you're definitely going to want to come back tomorrow afternoon when I'm kind of breaking down our live streaming setup. because I think that would probably be the point that you would want to hit with plugins is, kind of on the end of that chain, and you can even incur a little bit of latency there on your full mix. So your musicians are still getting, they're getting the cues and they're getting the monitor outputs fully organically with no added delay thanks to ARM. But then what goes out to your stream can have a little finalizing to it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the way to do it.
I think so. Yeah.
Hey Ben, if you want, I can cover that guitar DI.
Oh yeah,
one of the things on my list if you want.
Yes, please share your screen.
So let me share my screen. I'll show you guys. This is something that came up. One of our forum members had asked about this. This is a workflow that a lot of people are used to with console and their current DAW, and it's actually a little bit problematic. And the workflow here is that if you're looking to record your guitar dry, but still be able to monitor through a plugin. And typically in console, you're having to bring it in and then send it to an aux and then monitor the aux, which is cool during recording, but then during playback, you have to worry about how am I going to record the aux? Am I going to play it back and so forth?
Yeah.
But Luna makes this. This is one of the workflows that Luna makes really, really super easy. So here I have a track that's receiving a high Z input, and we get the unison interaction that you want and the impedance matching, and that will get recorded to its own track, completely dry. And then I've got a pre-fader send here to a send labeled amp, and then over here in the amp channel, I've got the Fender, and this plays a double role in the sense that you're able to monitor through the amp, but it also is stereo. So this is a little trick that a lot of people use for the Fender, because the Fender is a stereo plugin, but it's also unison. And if you put it on a single channel, you're only getting, a mono version of that. So this allows you to run that in stereo and then on a send and have that be one of your ARM sends. And then also following it up if you want with some reverb. That's, I've got the wet dry mix blended back. And the cool thing about this is that you get to hear it all in all its glory during recording. Meantime, you're only recording the dry signal, but also it plays back through that same chain without any issues there. So that's a workflow that typically was you had to jump through some hoops to get happening. People were using virtual channels or recreating the same plugins in your DAW. But anyway, that's one was on my list to cover real quick.
Yeah, that's a really smart trick, especially if you want to use that Fender in stereo. This trick is really good, and of course, one modification you can make to this is if you wanted to, you could put you could put the Fender on the guitar DI track, and if you have it in that insert section, it won't be committed, so you would still have raw DI signal that you could then come back and audition different amps after the fact. But the one thing, as you pointed out, is it would be in mono instead of in stereo, whereas by routing it to that aux, the way you've done it here, you can get exactly just pure DI guitar, but then use the Fender for its full stereo-ness and also be able to layer in reverb like that. That's a really smart way of doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just one. That was a little one little snippet that I wanted to share.
That's a good one. Looks like the one. When's the next after hours, Ben? The next after hours, Ben, is probably going to be tomorrow evening. I can't do this evening, but I think I can do tomorrow evening. We're getting close. The mix. We're 4 hours in on the mix, which is very long for me. Normally, I'm not talking and trying to answer questions at the same time, so I'm rolling nice and slow on that. But let me look at my calendar, and I'll tell you. We can confirm it here on air if I can do tomorrow night. Yes, I can. We're going to do it tomorrow night after hours. We'll keep on mixing together. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying seeing that. And, we had a great session this morning. Tom brought in Sam Calver to sing and play. So I saw someone earlier kind of asking about vocal tracking inside of Luna. Sam kind of walked us through tracking some acoustic guitars and then ultimately tracking a vocal take. If you go back and watch the replay of it, don't mind the audio while he's recording. Skip a chunk. Exactly. Skip right after that, because we figured out part of the magic and the internet pipes were a little bit clogged coming out of England this morning. There was just some gunk in the pipes, I think is what it was. So as soon as we turned off Sam's video, we got clear audio and we got to hear the entire performance, which sounds so good. It's crazy how fast, like Neve 1073, 1176 AE. a little bit of capital chambers, a little bit of pure plate. That was it. That's all it needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we took a guitar sound. I think Drew's going to say it. Go on.
Oh no! I was just gonna comment on how Sam would use the same plugins over and over again, and like there was like a cohesion. It's like a comfort factor, but there's also a cohesion in that. That's one of the things that's sort of the old timers, and maybe I fall into that category. But like we talk about how a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to pick and choose my preamps, and a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute. Part of the reason why records sounded cool is because everything went through the Neve, everything went through the 1176. So and that Sam is sort of evidence of that, where it's like there's a comfort factor with him. But yeah, Tom's going to talk about those acoustics.
Oh yeah, well it's funny because I think 1073 and 1176 was pretty much everything from his guitar tracking to his vocal tracking. And people tend to rely on those things. I mean, why not? They've made so many amazing records, right? But the one thing we did show him, which I thought was quite interesting, was taking a DI acoustic guitar, which generally never sound amazing. They never sound like you've mic'd an acoustic. And then we tried the Sound Machine Woodworks plugin, which is a bit of a sleeper plugin on the UAD platform, and being able to run that in ARM mode and take a DI'd guitar at home and turn it into effectively a mic'd up Dreadnought style guitar. And it just was great for layering. And I think a lot of people are out there who've got, maybe you don't own an amazing microphone yet, but you want to check things out and you're DIing your acoustics. Check that plugin out and be able to record through it in ARM. It's really good fun.
We should check with Dan and see how many they've sold today of that plugin.
No, right? If you always saying you see a woodwork spike, then that was this office hours. Everybody coming in and checking it.
That'd be funny.
That would be really funny.
Drew, you just touched on something that actually reminded me of something that I've seen come up a few times in the feedback. It's not a major report, but it's really just sort of like a conceptual thing about the way that the tape emulation in Luna works by the tape row. And what you mentioned was cohesion. And some things that I've noticed come up in the feedback are people wanting to apply a tape machine preset that's different per track. And you can certainly do that, but if you want to do that, you should go in and with the Studer adjust the specific controls. But let me back up. The other thing, of course, you can do is if you own the Studer 800 or the Oxide plugin, the U82 version, you can always do per channel specific super creative sound design things with the tape plugin. But the entire purpose of the way that the tape machine system is implemented in Luna is realism and cohesion. And that is all based on the fact of the traditional, just pure limitations, almost so to speak, of a tape machine are that everything is on the same tape formula, playing back at the same tape speed. The only tweaks that you get are calibration and things like emphasis EQ and bias and the way that you can per channel tweak the actual input and output characteristics of like the repro head or the sync head and the drivers into the tape. So the way that the tape machine system in Luna works is that you apply a machine to a set of tracks, or in other words, are declaring that any number of tracks are being played back from one tape machine, and that tape machine has presets. So all the tracks that are going to my B Studer 800 fall under this particular preset. So the reason a lot of these are much more, you've got some examples of things like kick drum, but most of them are like genre based or sort of this more like clinical ultralinear stuff. And that's for a reason. That's so that your concept of this machine functionality is really for a cohesive application across all the tracks. And that was really the major like paper cut pain point of tape plugins in the past, and why this Luna extension is so much a part of the fabric of the experience is that you don't have to set it up on every channel in the same way that you would with a plugin window and gang modes or group functionality. It just works that way, where you make global changes at the tape machine level and have tape machine level controls like the formula, the speed, and the calibration, and then per channel controls on each track so that you can really go in and dial it if you need to. But the beautiful thing about this is you can literally just throw on Oxide on everything. Just go Oxide and hit all, and you're already in this world of like, oh, like the difference should be immediate. It always is for me, even just on a couple tracks, especially once you add that with Neve and you're just in this whole other world where cohesion really is like, it's such a good keyword of like why the same thing over and over again. Like to your point about what was going on with Sam, it's just like, it sounds good that way. And that's how it's often always sounded good, because it's all like the same channels on a console or all the same tape formula playing back at the same speed for all the tracks on our recording. So I
And
think
is there anything more beautiful than those Studer reels spinning in the GUI? I mean, those Studer, man, that is just, I love that. I don't know what it is. I just love that.
I can say there's one thing that's more beautiful than the spinning reels of tape. It is the VU meters with actual ballistics to them to help you set your gain staging.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
true.
That is the thing that has made the biggest difference for me, is being able to actually see, like, am I in a good spot overall level wise, and you're getting that feedback that isn't just a peak meter at the bottom of your mixer.
Yep.
That's really good. I've seen a lot of questions, a lot of people asking about the Townsend Lab Sphere. Those are all very good questions. If you've used the Sphere in console, it's basically no different for how you do it in Luna. You can record raw if you want and put it on the insert side, so you're just monitoring through the Sphere, or you can put it up in the record effects and actually commit to a sound through it as well. I don't have a Sphere here with me. I might see if I can snag one from headquarters next week.
I have one, Ben. So if we need to do anything,
Oh, yeah?
we can set it up for a future one. Yeah, sure.
Here we go. Drew, have your Sphere at the ready, and next time we have an open session here, let's show the people how the Sphere actually works.
Yeah,
inside
and
of
just
Luna.
a quick little preview is it's kind of like what I just showed already. It makes something that would be typically problematic, that is monitoring through something and then also having to match the playback. Luna just makes that dead simple. So it's a spoiler alert. It's easy. So
Cut right to the chase there. All right, good.
On
But
that
we'll
note,
show
actually,
details.
you know what would be cool to show as well? I saw a question coming on the chat I think it was last week maybe, but it was to do with MS recording with a mid-side mic setup. So obviously you would normally try and create a M-S and an M+S to effectively get the nice decode effectively, or encode, depending on how you want to look at it, of MS into left, right, and vice versa. But the thing that I remember reading it in the manual, and I did have a look on the chat, is there's a Brainworks plugin, the BX Digital plugin that we have on UAD. There's a MS rec mode in the middle of that massive monster UI.
Oh.
Yep.
And apparently that will work as a one-way encode decode. So if you have your MS pair coming into two channels on a stereo track with the M left and side right, and then have that plug in there, we should be able to show this as well, Drew. If you want to, like, when you're looking at Townsend Sphere, we could also look at being able to monitor through that plugin.
yeah,
Which
sure.
one is that?
So it
The
should be in the
BX3.
V2 and V3, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not personally tried it because I don't have two microphones and one with figure of 8 to do it. But you see in the middle there, you've got MS Rec on that switch there. Then that should allow you to then EQ, obviously, the two sides of the microphones, well, the left and right sides differently at that point. But it will also work as the one way.
That's super cool, and that's such a cool way of doing it. And then you can also you can track and listen in MS. You can give it gentle. You can give it some EQ moves, and there's some other cool stuff that these. As you saw, like my mastering workflow is 100% centered around. I still use the V2 because it's darker and more familiar to me. I don't.
It actually stands out a lot more, but you still have that switch right in the middle there. You see it's got MS Rec at the bottom.
Right there.
I believe that's the one. We should check that out and make sure I'm not just making this up.
Yeah, no, Tom, you and I, we'll coordinate offline and we'll build up a demo for a future office hours.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That's really great. Something else that someone pointed out, none of us have clicked this button in any demo of Luna yet. This button to
the channel strip.
The channel strip. Someone shouted it out, and I think it was on Friday during happy hour or whatever. Channel strip is dope. It stacks your.
Can't believe we've forgotten that,
dude. I don't know why this doesn't come up faster.
Yeah.
So channel strip. Let me switch back to that other session because I had one in there that's like got a really healthy chain going on. That would be a good one to demonstrate this on. Let's see, which track was it? This one here. So here I've got like four, I've got a bunch of processing all happening one after the other. You hit this, there we go. You get one window. You can see all of your plugins in one spot on that chain, which is super, super cool. And this
that sound is going to be an interesting one, Ben.
Oh, dude,
and this is not, it's not new to Luna, of course. This is a console feature, that's been brought into Luna.
Well, Tom, since you mentioned it, Tom, this is a very cool.
This
is a very cool sound.
EP34 into a panner into the filter. I've got to hear this one.
All right, I'm gonna take them off.
This is my level of crazy, man.
I'm gonna take them off first, so you guys can all see and hear and experience. So this is just a simple drum loop. Oh, sorry. Let me give you guys. Let me just give the peanut gallery here. You guys are gonna get it through Zoom.
That's okay.
So that's where we started. We're totally off track here, but this is what the people want. The people on
This is great.
But if you're going to show a channel strip, I want to hear the
exactly.
thing.
So let me pull up. So the SSL is in there. I flipped it so it can be cranked, pretty compressed. But then the real trick that I pulled on this one was the gate. So check out what that gate is doing. Okay, helps if I turn it on. So I used it to get it very staccato, really punchy, like right on every little drum hit to separate those out. And then come in with the tape echo, just freewheel. I just tuned this by ear. It's giving tone. It's giving a little length. It's adding back those in-betweens. And this is 100% ripped off from Vance Powell. This is his delay on the snare drum trick. And he does the same thing, and not only you could synchronize this and make it very rhythmic, but what actually sounds cooler is to take it off of that and just find something that feels right in the moment. Into the panner. This was like a preset that I then just kept on tweaking until it was fully spinning around my head. This was at 1 a.m. And then finally follow that up.
Nothing good happens after midnight, Ben. You know the rule.
Everything great happens after midnight for me.
We have too much. We've got too many times where good things have happened after midnight.
Exactly. And then finally came in with the Moog multi-mode filter, and then this now makes it an 8-bar phrase where it starts completely filtered out.
Big old snare roll.
And then, it disappears into the beat, of which maybe I'll show you guys this beat a little bit later this week. But that's kind of a cool little chain, kind of a crazy chain. But you're right, it actually all sums together into a really cool, interesting effect.
And being able to look at it, because I'm guessing when you dialed that in, changing one thing at the end you'd need to change something at the beginning, and it's like a big old iterative loop of tweaks. So having the channel strip view so you can see it all and interact with it all like it's a rack of gear, that's a great feature.
Yep. And of course, I think a lot of it also involved like kind of moving things around in the chain, which you can't move them inside the chain view here, but you can move them around over here. And as you saw, it just updates the chain in here, so you're always seeing exactly what it is. And I can't remember, does this also work with can you put AU plugins in there?
Yeah, you can put AU in there. Yeah,
look at that.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
just like that. So yeah, that's plugin chains. If you guys haven't seen, if you're new to some of the stuff inside the UA, that plugin chain button, don't sleep on it. It's a good one.
I can't believe that hasn't come up yet.
I can't believe it has either.
Yeah.
I
think I hit on it once and I don't tend to use it, so I clicked away from it. But it's an amazing feature, and I should use it more. Does the unison slot fall into that one? Actually, do you remind me?
No, it doesn't. I think
it's
that's
the insert bank, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. You know what? We conveniently I've got my chain here. I was playing bass on, so I've got the Ampeg. Yep. So Ampeg shows up without it, but then the record effects, you could pull that up.
They have their own. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, Unison, since it's only ever one plugin gets to go in there, it gets its own special slot.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Great feature.
And shout out to whoever actually asked about that on Friday, and we didn't get to it. Thank you for the reminder that plugin chains are cool.
Yeah. Hey, just to cycle back on my MIDI thing, I did some more testing in the background. I can't make that reliable, but when you drag the files back into another workstation, they split out the same way, which is just the general MIDI type. So I remember having to do this a long time ago when I had hardware sequences and stuff. You're going to have to glue your MIDI slices into one big thingy and then export it and bring it in. That's the best way to know you've got one single consolidated MIDI track to bring in. So if anyone's still having issues with that, my MIDI knowledge is tapped out. I do mastering.
Oh, there was a good follow-up question I just saw now of when will we be able to save the channel strip? That's a absolutely wonderful feature, and I would absolutely love to see that. Hit that feedback button up there. Let us know that you want to see it as well.
Smash it.
Smash it. Just smash it.
The nice thing about that button is, unlike hardware, it can't fail.
Exactly.
I say that, but actually, no, we could probably have a server crash or something. So I've just jinxed that for Connor.
Well, you
sorry.
can if you're really paying attention, you can tell that when the input chains are backed up and do have their own history,
Mhm.
right? So I don't know if you want to
Oh,
show
yeah,
that, Ben,
undo.
if you want. Yeah, you've got there is a backup in there. So if you arm a track and you go to the top of the mixer, you'll see that a little arrow. You go to yeah, there you go. So you can see it there and there's actually a little downward facing arrow. So that will show your backups.
Mm-hmm. And so
So you
that
can
let's test this backup theory. So if I remove, I already recorded the part. So let's say I want to switch it out. I want to change amps. I want to go 1176. Now,
But it does it periodically. So
periodically. So let's see.
you might have to wait on it.
Let's find out. Let's see how good this thing really is. Back up. Take me back to where I was.
There you go.
It took me back to nothing.
Oh.
Wait. 306. 308.
Hey, Ben, could you do me a favor and hit the feedback button?
There it is, right?
Well, it brought back the new one. It didn't bring back the one I loaded up last night. So it seems to.
There's evidence of it.
Exactly. There was a whisper that it was there. It did exist at one point in time, but
It's Connor's work in progress.
mm-hmm.
Hey, Ben, there's a really good shortcut for this. Command Z.
Oh yeah, let's try that, Drew, or Tom, whoever you are.
Some weirdo on the internet.
There we go. See,
There you go.
Tom saved the day. So,
Yay.
dude, look at it. I left this in record. Had that feedback. So I left this in record, but by using Command Z, I was able to scroll through my all the shenanigans I just pulled. SVT. Nope, don't want that. I want to go back to my B15. There we go. And now I'm back to it. Thank you, Luna, for saving everything. I appreciate you. Awesome, guys. Well, cool. So, guys, we've blasted through this hour. This was we always come in with these ones. I think we respond to a bunch of questions. We hit some topics that have been coming up perennially. If we didn't get to your questions in the stream, definitely come back to the next one. Tomorrow morning, let me look. You guys get to look ahead into the schedule. Tomorrow morning, we got a blank one, so we're going to be able to do some more Q&A. Maybe we'll have Drew show off the Sphere input monitoring, and I'll actually play you guys some of this beat, and we can talk a little bit more about warping and some of the creative editing and audio MIDI stuff that you can do. Tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m., I'll take you guys through how we set up these crazy live streams and some of the back-end technology that we have going so that we're able to monitor out of Luna in real time and send it across the internet to other people at CD quality, which is really cool. And then Wednesday morning, we've got a really... I'm going to keep it a surprise, but it's a contest where you can win Apollos. That's it. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to leave it there.
Big time.
So the Wednesday one, and you have to make, and it forces you to make music too. So there's music making and Apollo winning all wrapped up into one thing. I'm sure you guys can kind of guess what it is, but come back on Wednesday to find out who we're partnering with for that one. Hopefully you guys didn't just read it off my sheet. And
A lot of freeze, a lot of pausing going on.
I know
right
a lot
now.
of people are rewinding right now, like what was that one? But then later this week we've got Jamie Liddell is coming in, I believe on Thursday. We're gonna talk about. Him and I are just gonna geek out together. We had a lot of fun. We met up over at NAMM this year, and we worked together on the Capitol Chambers song that, as you guys have seen in the 5-minute tip video that came out. So we're gonna chit chat about Luna and see what he's up to, how he's making it work inside of his studio. And then, like I mentioned on Friday, Corey Congilio will be here talking about session guitar player stuff. What does a session guitar player do? How does he use Luna to do it? And then interspersed in there, we'll have a bunch of Q&As. I'll show up tomorrow night. We'll do a little after hours, keep on working on that mix. And we'll just kind of keep the Luna flowing. That's all we got to do. And we'll keep our mics pointed in the correct direction as a pro tip. Point it. Yeah.
Got it. Sounds good, Ben.
Sounds great, guys.
Sounds good.
Well,
Can you
guys,
hear me?
it's been a wonderful office hours hanging out with all of you.
Access, boys.
You guys all sound amazing. Thank you everybody for hanging out with us here in the chat. We'll catch you guys at the next one.